Look, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet this week. I was recently having a conversation at a panel event that I was a part of. And one of the questions that was asked to me was, like, what do I think is one of the most commonly practiced mistakes in masculinity work when it comes to working with masculinity is around conversations relating to accountability, exploring and expanding ideas of masculinity. What's one of the most common mistakes that I see in the work that I do? And honestly, one of the most common mistakes that I see in the work that I do is the inability of practitioners to not name or acknowledge their unchecked haughtiness. Now, what I mean by that is there is something that can emerge in this work if we are not vigilant, if we are not intentional, if we are not curiously exploring the soils of our own ideological gardens, for lack of a better term. And it is this haughtiness that can be summarized in a sentence. I'm superior in this conversation. Now, that might feel uncomfortable to hear, but that is often deep in the soil of our ideological garden, something that we enter conversations with. We want to have conversations about accountability with young people with masculinities, but we're approaching the conversations with a sense of, I have the moral and conceptual superiority in this space, and it's my job to cast and wield this in the interactions that I have. That for me is one of the biggest mistakes that I see. My point is, when we enter the work, we think that accountability is a talking at conversation instead of a talking with. People cannot practice accountability without seeing accountability firsthand. I'm talking specifically to practitioners here. If we go into a conversation or a space with this unnamed, unacknowledged haughtiness, I have something that you don't, we come across like we've had things always figured out, that we've always made the right decision, that we've always said the right thing, that we've always done the right thing. And in doing so, we bypass, we edit, we remove some of the greatest learning experiences that we've personally went through and walked through. Because we all have them. We all have those moments where we've had to take accountability, or can I say we should have in those spaces. And if you're a practitioner that says, well, I've never really made those mistakes, then it's time to go back to the drawing board and explore and examine and dig in the soil of your own existential, garden, because we've all have many, many opportunities to be accountable in our past and also in our present. We approach accountability conversations with this unnamed haughtiness, this unchecked haughtiness that comes from a desire to appear in spaces as more powerful. And that might feel uncomfortable for you. And honestly, good. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful or intended to make this, deeply uncomfortable for you. But if it does land, that's good. Because what we often don't do is turn the external judgment or external exploration that we often facilitate in the spaces that we're part of inward. There comes a certain point where we think, oh, I've done this enough, so I'm good now. I don't need to do this anymore. I've done enough for the reflective work. I can just, it's just routine and it's habitual. No. The moment we start doing that is the moment we begin to fall into the fallacy that I, as a facilitator, am morally or conceptually more superior than those that I'm serving. And that is not the case. We are in that boat with the people that we serve. We are in those conversations with the people we are challenging. We are not above that exploration, that invitation to be accountable. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see in this work. It becomes more about telling people, look at what I know and look at what you don't. Look at what I have and look at what you don't. Look at what you've missed and look at what I caught. It becomes more about centering perceived expertise or at times perceived excellence over the safety of the space. You cannot foster cultures of accountability where judgment and shame are primarily present. You cannot foster cultures of accountability when you are not demonstrating your own accountability process. You cannot cultivate cultures of authenticity and accountability when you don't name your own processes, when you don't go first. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see in this work. We're very quick to want to go and tell other people that's the way to do it, but we're very reluctant and very slow to turn that lens inward. When it comes to conversations about changing culture, when it comes to conversations about changing the landscape, we must remember that we are active participants in the cultures that we're looking to share, not passive deliverers of the content that we believe is going to change the culture. If you're not in the conversation, if you're not in the figurative boat, then you're not in that process of cultivating and bridging gaps between the cultures that we want to be versus where we're at right now. That's some of the biggest mistakes that I see. So, what can we do? We have to recognize and name and make conscious effort to tame the internal voice or the internal frame of reference that goes, I know something that these people don't. We've got to name that haughtiness, not from a position of shame, but from a position of protection, protecting ourselves from coming into a space and looking really, at times arrogant or egotistical, but also protecting the safety of the spaces that we're a part of. When we detect the presence of shame or blame or haughtiness, nervous system shut down. And we ask ourselves the questions all the time. I just don't know why people want to engage in this. I don't know why people aren't engaged in this conversation. We very rarely look inward to how we've entered spaces, but we often look to the space itself. Oh, these people are just not ready for the conversation. Oh, they're reluctant. Oh, they're distant. Oh, they're disengaged. We very rarely turn that mirror inwards and go, is it something that I've brought in without realizing, without recognizing, without taking the time to make sure that I was ready to facilitate those spaces that I'm a part of? We've got to turn those lenses inward, and we've got to name that unchecked haughtiness. So I'm going to leave that episode here. Just something I wanted to share because it's something that really, as I was speaking at the panel that I was a part of, it's something that I felt like I need to do something on this in the podcast format. So I hope this resonates. I hope it lands. And if it has dysregulated you in any way, shape or form, if it has activated you, please know and understand that this conversation that I'm having, I've had, or someone's had that conversation with me, rather. That sense of, I know what I'm doing and I feel morally and conceptually superior. Oh my goodness, I've had that conversation in my career. I had that conversation relatively early, but it's a conversation I continually go back to. Because if my job is creating and cultivating spaces of safety to get to crafting cultures of accountability, I have to make sure that I am myself as an active participant in those spaces that I'm facilitating. Are actually facilitating those spaces to explore, to examine, and to metabolize. So I hope this episode's helped. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you in a future episode very, very soon. Big, big blessings to you.